on?
You have your phone, you can see the title. Or you could use
I have every much as well.
You have a mic on?
not this week yet.
Don't
Don't worry.
The audio's going to be corrupted.
In the works.
It's good as say so.
Shimon, unimpressed, Shimon. You're sure supposed to be confident. Shimon, what's going on here?
Alright, good oven to everybody. Good ovens. So first of all, I want to point out that today is a Yom Tov. That is brought down in Megillah's Tainus, Beis Shvat, is the Yom Shemesh Boyanai. And there are two Yom Tovim in Megillah's Tainus, which is the ancient scroll written by Hananiah ben Chizkiah ben Guriyah Echad Kehanim, who was living in the time of Bayis Sheni. He's mentioned, of course, in Masechet Shabbos. There are 2 days that are mentioned in that scroll that are connected to the concept of a Yom Tov. That is the day Zayin Kislev, the day that Hurdus died, and Beis Shvat, the day that Yanai HaMelech died. And of course, we know Yanai HaMelech was a king and his mom Bayis Sheni, that was a tyrant, and a butcher, and a person who massacred so many Yidden, so many Frumi Yidden, and so many Yidden B'chlal. Anyone who was his enemy, he must have killed out, historians estimate, B'chol HaPochas at least, we're talking about at least, B'chol HaPochas about 50,000 people, something like that, a huge amount of people that he killed out, Rahman al-Islam, and he was a real tyrant and a real butcher. And as the Megillah's Tainus says, Ba'avoid Rishoyim Rina, when the Rishoyim die, we sing. We don't act liberal and say, after Osama bin Laden was killed, we say, oh, we have to mourn. After all, he's a human being, like the liberals. No! Ba'avoid Rishoyim Rina! We rejoice. We're happy that the Poyol Mamish, and of course the excitement is being emphasized, especially that we have to show happiness and joy that Baruch Hashem, an enemy of Hashem, was killed. And some of you might ask, but it doesn't say that when your enemy, and there it says if your Jewish enemy, what a Megillah says, if your Jewish enemy falls, you shouldn't rejoice, chas v'sholem. So the answer to that taina is that in Chanami Yitaka says that, but over here it's different, because over here it's not just about you. It's about the Kovod of Hashem. Yanai HaMelech fought the Eibishter. So the day that he died, give me just a second, I want to see one thing. Give me a moment. A minute. And he died in the year 3688. That's Gimel Alofim Tov Reish Pei Ches. That was the year that he died. And like I said, there are two people that were zoiche, so to speak, that merited to get a Yom Tov on the day that they died. One is Hurdus the Goy, the Adoni, cousin of the Romans, who was an anti-Semite in Russia. And on the day he died, they made a Yom Tov. And the other, of course, is Yanai HaMelech. They both merited, quote unquote, this kind of weird. So that's Beis Shvat, a very holy time. And it's very interesting that Shvat is a month that has to do with Shovet, with rulership. And what the Eibishter basically was, Shevet means Shevet Melucha, the rod of kingship. And what the Eibishter was basically telling Yanai was, you think you have the rod of kingship, I have the rod of kingship. Now, I want to move on to business, and that is the discussion we had last week. So, first of all, I have a couple of Maramakoimis that I want to share with you, but I'm going to save them for the end of the Shiur, rather than the beginning of the Shiur, and that is regarding the difference between Ashkenazim and Sephardim. We spoke Ba'arichas. Anybody who listens to the last Shiur gets all the information he needs. Ba'arichas and flow, many Maramakoimis, many sources. I'm sure some of you got a chance to look them up, and they're all there exactly where I said they are. This Shiur B'chal merits Mamoyedek Schus, and that is that we barely say theories in this Shiur. Even the theories I mentioned come from Sfadam Akdashim as well. And I quote the facts the way they are. Now, what I want to focus on today is how this difference between Ashkenazim and Sephardim in regards to accepting the Agoda as validity 100% that cannot be debated with, cannot be argued with, and the battle between the Ashkenazim and Sephardim about that matter, how it didn't only affect the theory, but and the way their attitude to life was. For example, a major thing that affected was Kiddush Hashem. The fact that Ashkenazim were ready to slaughter their own kids and literally shech their own kids with a bracha rather than have them convert to Christianity. But the Sephardim didn't exactly see that attitude. Even the Gabi themselves, Sephardim in most cases preferred to accept Christianity, not just Islam, but even Christianity, like we see in 1391 in the Xeris in Spain, rather than die. At least externally they would accept it. Of course, in their heart they went back to being good Jews, but externally they accepted it. And the difference is because all these midrashim about Kiddush Hashem that highlight the chiyuv of Kiddush Hashem and the obligation of Kiddush Hashem, most of those midrashim are dealing with inyonim that have to do with Agoda. And the Agoda was not 100% considered fact in the world of the Sephardim. In the world of the Sephardim, Agoda was not considered 100% fact. It was debatable. It was a matter that could be discussed. It was not considered 100% fact. So what I want to discuss today, after we gave them out of in the background for this matter, is practical examples. I want to also reiterate again that the Rambam does not come from a hollow space. Give me a second. I made a bracha before. The Rambam does not come from a hollow space. The Rambam is basing himself on the derech of the Go'inim. The Go'inim of Babel, the rabbis who lived in Muslim Babylon. Notice the common denominator is one link connecting everything. They all lived in a Muslim world. In a world that was heavily influenced by Greco philosophy, because the Muslim world, when they conquered Alexandria, Egypt, and they took over the massive library of Alexandria, Egypt, they had access to all the books of the Greeks, which were then translated, of course, into Arabic, and they had access to heavy Greco-Roman literature. And the Ashkenazi world didn't know who Aristotle is, they didn't know who Plato is, they weren't interested in Aristotle, they weren't interested in Plato, they considered it Kfida and Epicurus, and that is the stark difference between the Ashkenazi world and the Sephardi world. Now we're going to get into the practical aspect of things, how it expresses itself in halakha. So let's begin from case number 1. The first case I want to describe to you is actually going to be only a quote from the Go'inim, specifically a quote from the Go'inim. Give me just a moment. And that is a quote that is found specifically in Oitzer HaGo'inim, Mahaduras Binyamin Menashe 11, Megillah, Chelek Atshuvas Siman Rebbe. That's 3 on the page. I already told you about Binyamin Menashe 11. You should feel very connected. He might be connected, by the way, because he also came from Russia. He was a Lubavitcher Chassid. He's considered till this day. He became a Tzchireni eventually, like many Lubavitcher Chassidim did, because Lubavitcher Chassidim are idealists in their nature, and therefore, naturally, they have to strive for a certain battle. So many of them became Tzionim. In a good way. I'm not talking about Tzionim in a frum way, like Rabbi Zevin. And again, we disagree with them, but we respect their perspective. You can't disrespect their perspective. They had a legitimate perspective. We disagree with it, but they have their perspective. Rabbi Binyamin Menashe 11 was a tremendous Gaon. Until this day, he's considered the Gedoyel Chikrei Kufas HaGo'inim, the greatest scholar in the period of the Go'inim. And so he brings down an interesting tshuva that is brought down from one of the Go'inim. And this is a very, very phenomenal tshuva, and it discusses the following thing. There is a shaila over there asked, and that shaila is asked. Now the Goin remains anonymous. We don't know which Goin exactly asks that. But he was asked by somebody about a certain Gemara. The Gemara says like this. It's a Gemara that's located in Psochim Daf Kuf Yud Zayin Amud Beis. Forgive me, I'm going to be looking down at the notes here, so don't get offended. I'm not ignoring anybody, but I can't do both. I'm not very good at multitasking, so I can only focus on one thing at a time. So I'm not ignoring you, but I just have to go through the information. The Gemara says in Psochim Daf Kuf Yud Zayin Amud Beis that when it says to David HaMelech in Shmuel, the second book of Shmuel, chapter 7, verse 9, I'll make you a great name, like the name of the Gedolim in the land. So the Gemara says, Tani Rav Yosef zeh sho'im bir Mogen David. Rav Yosef teaches that this will eventually mean that the Jewish people are going to start saying Mogen David and Shmona Esrei the same way they say Mogen Avraham. Now, the question was presented to the Goy.
Does it mean the Haftarah, Mogen David?
Now you would think it means the Haftarah, but many people felt, and that's the Pashup Shot, by the way. However, many people felt that perhaps it means Shmona Esrei as well. Excellent, right on the ball. So the question that was presented is perhaps we should start saying it in Shmona Esrei as well. And the response of the Goyim was not it means Haftarah, but rather the response is Hagoda ein soimchin aleha. It's Hagoda, don't even get me involved. One of the Chachmei Ashkenaz would say it means Haftarah, but what do the Goyim say? Don't even get me involved. This is Hagoda. I don't want to discuss this. This is an anonymous Goy, but once again, 90% of the Tshuvas HaGoyim come from the writings of the rabbis of Muslim Babylon. Remember, the Talmud was not written in a Muslim world, it was written in a Persian world that did not have access to the Greco literature. The Chachmei HaShas didn't deal with the Greco-literature. They even wrote Osel Adam Lamadis B'nei Chachmei Yevonis, which, by the way, there's a big debate what it means. Some Mepharshim want to say it means philosophy. Interestingly enough, the Chachmei Sfard went out of the way to explain that it doesn't mean philosophy, but rather means mythology, or kishif, or Avodah Zarah, but not philosophy, even though the Poshup Pshat, by the way, not according to Rashi, but according to many other commentators, means actually philosophy. They went out of the way, they even went out of the way to say that Aristotle was Jewish, and that he came from Shevet Binyamin. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting tales about that. Just to quote you, and again, I'm a little bit veering off, but we're getting right back onto business. And just to quote you a little bit interesting information over here from Spartic literature, which is going to sound quite interesting. But basically, notes.
I think Yosifin writes that the Spartans come from Shimon or something.
No, that we know for a fact that they come not from Shimon. They come from the Spartans come from Avro. They're descendants of Esau. They're descendants of Esau. The Spartans are descendants of Esau. That's the book. The Spartans are descendants of Esau. That's why they wrote to Kohen Gadol. They wrote to him, we are brothers, because we're also descendants of Avro. It makes a lot of sense because the Romans descended from the Spartans. And the Spartans believed to be descendants of Avram through Esau. Not only that, the Spartans have in their tradition the concept. Why am I not finding it? 1 second. Of course I know this. Just I have to look up my book. The Spartans wrote. The Spartans have a tradition that in Crete, in the island of Crete, which is right near Sparta, they have a tradition that there was a king who slayed a half ox and a half bull and a half human, which was a mythological Greek creature. If you take a look in the Medrash, it says the same thing about Tzfoy ben Eliphaz, and that he eventually became the king of Kittim, which according to Josephus, Kittim might be Crete. And the people of Kittim moved to Sparta, and from Sparta they moved to Italy. So we see the connection of Italy to Sparta to Avraham Avinu, but not from Sheva Shimon. I'm going to find it in a moment. It's an important Maramokim, which is why I'm going out of my way to find it, just in order to help out the cause. 1 moment, please. Okay, this is what I'm looking for. On the Zion, and Aleph, it's around the Mems. Yeah. Rabbi Yosef Bar Shimon in the Akadama to Sefer Amidos, which he translated from Rabbi Meir al-Wadis. That's a name from the Jews in the Muslim world, to Lashon Kodesh from the works of Arizal, writes, and this is quoted by the Seder Adoros, Ro'isi b'Mitzrayim, I saw in Mitzrayim, okay, no, that's not what I wanted, actually, I'm sorry. This is what I wanted, actually. I wanted this, and that is that it's brought down, the Seder Adoros brings down that there were, this is what I wanted here. In Seder Adoros, he brings down in the Sefer Mogin Avrom to the Avrom Paritzoli. Also quoted in Seder Adoros, Gimal Aleph and Tav Beis, he writes that Aristotle became a Ger Tzedek. Not only that, Rabbi Yosef Bar Shimon writes in his Hakadama to Sefer Amidos that he translated from the Meir al-Wadis that he saw in a book in Mitzrayim that Aristotle admitted b'Seif Yom of the Teiras Moshe and became a Jew. Now, we do not have any record of this, and I'm not knocking the story. I'm not saying the story is about Maisa. I'm not saying that. I have no right to say that. The fact that these are Hashim Gedolim, these are great, great holy people that actually said some of these statements. So I'm not knocking the story. All I'm pointing, and I'm not saying it's the Emes. It could be is Emes, that Hitaka did become a Ger Tzedek. But the reality is that the fact that they're pushing so much to say that he's a Ger Tzedek definitely indicates a certain drive to try to Judainize Aristotle. The reason they wanted, give me a second. The reason why they wanted to Judainize him, the push to Judainize him, is specifically because they felt that he is very much connected to Judaism because they loved so much the teachings of philosophy, and they wanted very much the teachings of philosophy to be accepted as a Jewish way of life. It should be also noted that brought down in Seder Adoros in the same place, Gimal Aleph and Tav Beis, he brings down that there were Jews in Spain who believed that he actually was a Jew, and that he was Asher Hu Hoya Ish Yehudi Mizera Yisrael Yerushalmi Bibnei Kulia Nishevet Binyamin, that he was from Shevet Binyamin, Vayedet Me'ahodim Eleinu, and he came down from the mountains to us, Vayishim Monoyomim Rabim, and the Jews of Spain used to like to quote this information from a Christian book that's ancient. That's what they said. They found in a Christian book that's ancient. But the reality is, as you understand yourself, that this is quite shver. It's quite difficult to say that Aristotle came from a Jewish family, because the reality is that we do not have any record of this. And this was the sheet of the Sephardic Yidden, that he might have come from a Jewish family. Ad kedei kach. So you see yourself how much they felt that Aristotle was close to them. And of course, in the Ashkenazi world, they probably would be going out of their way to prove that Aristotle was a Koifer and a Rasha, and he came from the Goyim, and he has no connection to Yiddishkeit. Chas v'shalom. Here they're trying to say he comes from Shevet Binyamin, which is, you see the stark difference. Ad kedei kach to believe that it came. Now that much, I have to tell you, I don't know if I'm willing to accept. I don't think I'm willing to accept that Aristotle came from Shevet Binyamin.
Is there any secular corroboration?
Not a single secular corroboration in any source whatsoever. And there's no question about it that the Sephardic love for Aristotle's writings pushed them in this direction.
Now, was it maybe Spartan?
Spartan? I'm sorry?
Was it maybe Spartan?
Well, you said, was he Spartan?
Yeah.
No, Aristotle wasn't Spartan. We don't have record of that being the case.
So what was his lineage? He was a
Greek. He was a Greek from Athenian, more connected to the Athenians. He wasn't born necessarily in Athens. It was debatable where he was born. But definitely, we have to look up exactly where he was born.
Did he live?
We don't exactly know where he was born, but I will tell you that he's not a Spartan, because the culture is not Spartan. Aristotle was all about seichel, and Sparta was about blood.
When did he live?
Sparta doesn't really represent Yovan. It represents, by the way, Esau, much more than Yovan. And that's why it makes sense they come from Esau. And like I explained to you, the whole thing fits with the story of Sefer HaYoshar about Tzfoy ben Eliphaz, the descendant of Esau's slave.
We'll do another Shiur.
Yeah, let's go back there.
Esau was a Yid, so they're Yid?
Esau was not, it was married Shiksus. He might have been a Yid. It's debatable if he was a Yid, yes or no. It's a Shaila. The Rebbe takes on the Sikha that he might have been a Yehudi Mumar, according to many Shittas, and the Rebbe is loyal to that, but that has nothing to do with his wife. He for sure married Shiksus.
Okay.
Let's go back to it a little bit. So that's it. Back to the Goyim. You see that the Goyim, what did the Goyim say? The Goyim did not say Haftorah. The Goyim said it's Agoda, don't get me mixed up with it. Which is mamish the kav of Rav YY Goin, and many of the other Goinim we quoted last time. Remember, we quoted a bunch of Goinim. We quoted a whole bunch. We quoted Rav Shmuel ben Chafni Goin, Rav YY Goin, Rav Shiur Goin, Rav Saadia Goin. Now, it's important to note that Rav Shiur Goin had a daughter who married an Ashkenazi rabbi, and she married Rabbeinu Elyokim of Germany. It's brought down in the Tshuvas, by the way, of the Goinim, that they even at the chasana of this Rabbeinu Elyokim, who was a German Jewish rabbi that married an Iraqi girl, a Babylonian girl. Hence, at the chasana they shechted a ben pekua. They found a baby in the mother's. They didn't shecht it. So what they did is they killed it by putting on a crown full of spikes on its head, and that killed it because you're not going to shecht a ben pekua, a baby that's found in the mother's stomach. That is to say, a calf that's found in the mother's stomach. You don't have to shecht it, but you kill it in that oifen. And that was a zikoron from that chassan. Rav YY Goin himself mentions the communities of Ashkenaz and says, Maleim mitzvahs kerimoyim. And they are choshev communities, and we can rely on them for chasnidah, and he praises them very much. Don't forget that Rabbeinu Gershom was studied by Rav YY Goin. So there was interaction between these communities, but it must be noted that as much as he studied by them, Chachmei Ashkenaz had their own tradition. There's even a theory from Professor Yisrael Toshma, that itself is a Talmud sounding name. He wants to tie that besides Suda and Pumpadisa, there was a third yeshiva. And the theory of the third yeshiva is that third yeshiva created the Adas Ashkenaz, but that's a theory that has not been based on anything except for Yisrael Toshma's healthy imagination, and he was a great scholar. I'm not putting him down. He was a giant in history, but he took the liberty sometimes of coming up with original ideas that don't have a source. I don't think we have to come on to that. I think that the better theory is that we know that when Emperor Charlemagne sent Jews to meet Ron Arashid, who was one of the great caliphs of the Muslim world, he asked the Ron Arashid already in the 8th century, in the 9th century, he asked him to send over a rabbi that was scholarly from the eastern countries to settle in the Frankish kingdom so that the Frankish kingdom should become independent in Torah as well as business. And he sent him Rabbi Mochir, who was a descendant of the Reish Galusa, who settled in Narbonne in the south of France. And that was the first major established yeshiva. Could be that yeshiva had a different predated the Greco-Roman influence of the Muslim world. Could be that Rabbi Mochir stuck more to the original Babylonian tradition. It's also interesting that the Bahag, The Baal Halachas Gedolos also is different than the other scholars of the Muslim world. He lived in Bavel, but he relies on Agoda heavily. And he and Chachmei Ashkenaz see eye to eye on many, many matters, which is quite interesting. You see that even in Bavel, not everybody had the attitude of adopting the Muslim Greco influence. The Muslim Greco influence didn't get to all the Chachmei Bavel. There was some Chachmei Bavel that still stuck to the old pre-Muslim conquest style, the old Persian stuff. In the Persian world, mysticism was very, very much accepted. There's a lot of parallels between the German world and the Persian world. You probably know that the word Iran means Aryan, and that is because the Persians are B'nai Yefes, they're not B'nai Chum. Some of them are darker today, it's probably because they have a lot of Mongolian blood that mix with them and other blood, but Be'etzim, that's why they're very, very intelligent. They're super, super intelligent, because why are they so intelligent? They're very, very intelligent. We see a common denominator. The Indians are very intelligent, they're very intelligent, and also the people from the area of Germany have a quite high IQ. And there's a common denominator, even though they're not Europeans at all. So I'm not being racist now, Chas v'shalom, we're against racism, of course. We believe that, scholarly wisdom is found by all races, but the reality is you do see a common denominator by Indians, Iranians, and Germans, that they all have a very high IQ.
Aren't the Northern Indians called Aryans also? Exactly,
the Northern Indians are called Aryans, and there's no question about it. We discussed this, by the way, me and Rabbi Katz over here. And the reality is that there's definitely a connection about that. You see a connection. There were B'nai Yefes. Don't forget, Rashi says Tiros Zuporas, and that's B'nai Yefes. So the reality is a connection. So definitely in the German world, mysticism was very much found. And in the world of Persia, mysticism was also found. There's no question about it. So what I'm trying to say is there was a lot of influence of the pre-Muslim conquest Greco influence that existed in that world. Let us move on to some more examples. We already read the Rambam's sharp words about Agodas Hashas, which are heavily based on Rav Shmuel ben Chafni Goyim. Rav Shmuel ben Chafni had a major influence on the Rambam, a tremendous influence on the Rambam, as well as with Hai Goyim, Shiur and many, many others who criticized Agodas Hashas. Not criticized, it's not the right word.
Disregarded.
Thank you. Not criticized, but disregard. That's the perfect word. Disregard Agodas Hashas, while recognizing that they're very beautiful and we have to teach them, and it's Torah. They recognize that it's Torah. If you ask the Rambam, they have to make Birkas HaTorah, he'll say, of course you have to make Birkas HaTorah, it's Torah. Of course you have to make Birkas HaTorah, it's Torah Akdosha. But you can't paskin from it because it's not meant to be accepted as fact. It's meant to be accepted as a chassidische moshel, a chassidische parable, but you don't accept it as fact. And of course, the attitude of Shimshon Mishans, as you remember, I read to you his words last week, the third of the greatest Bali Tosfos, right? The Rabbeinu Tam and the Ri are the two greatest ones. Next on the list is Shimshon Mishans. And I read to you last week his words, his kanostic expressions, Cholilo Loimar, Chas v'sholom, to speak like that. And he was very, very, very angry about that, very upset. And his words are quoted in the Minchas Knois and the Sforim that speak about the battles between Ashkenaz and Sfardim about philosophy. So we spoke about his Shita last week. Let us move along a little bit to more information. I would like to present to you a Braisa in Bavli Nedorim, Daf Samach Hey Amud Aleph. That's number 5 on the list. And the Braisa says as follows: Hamudor hanoa mechaveiroi, ein matibn loy elo befonov. If you are mudor hanoa mechaveiroi, which means to say that you made a neder that you're not going to have hanoa from your friend in any way, shape, or form. If you want to be matir neder, it has to be done before. Let's try before. You have to bring the person that you bagged. You said, I'm not eating from your kitchen anymore. If you want to be matir neder, you have to bring him to Beis Din while the Hataras Nedorim happens. This is a Gemara in Nedorim of Samachei Amud Aleph. Rabbeinu Tam, and it's brought down Al Asar, I believe in Tosfos. Yeah, Tosfos right up at the Ramaskal Tznan, as well as the Rosh. Look up the Rosh Psukim Test Beis. You have the Mechamis number 5. Shtei Dorten, Rabbeinu Tam, the great Franco-German rabbi, the great Ashkenazi French rabbi, says that this din is dafke when you make a neder to a person because of a toiva that he did you. For example, he did you a big favor. He told him, because he did me a favor, I'm not going to bother you anymore. I know he did you because I gave you a huge loan of money, and he's not a rich man himself. So you say, you did me such a favor. You helped bail out my Chabad house. I'm not going to bother you anymore for any more favors. I'm not going to eat from your kitchen. I won't take from your money. So only if you did it nechamas toiva shasavai. Rabbeinu Tam bases that, paskins that way. But a neder that wasn't made because of a toiva, you don't have to be matter before. The Rosh quotes a raya to that from an Agoda. It's not mentioned anywhere else. It's an Agoda. Where's the Agoda? Bavli Soita Daf Lamed Vav Amud Beis. Pari tells Yosef you could be made for neder and say that you don't have to be made for neder and your father made you make a neder or shmua that you're going to bury him in Eretz Yisrael. You can be made for neder shaloi b'fonav. Why? Because you did him a chesed chinam. You didn't owe him anything. You didn't owe Yaakov anything. You did it as a favor to him. And because you did it as a favor to him, so therefore you don't have to be mater neder in front of him. Because any time a neder is done as a favor, you don't have to be mater neder in front of the person that you made the neder about. And of course, you know what Yosef told him. You want me to be mater that neder? So I'll be mater another neder. I shouldn't tell the rest of the world you don't know one of the 70 languages, Lashon Kodesh, which is quite embarrassing for a great king like you that doesn't know one of the 70 languages. And Pari said, no, don't be mater neder. No, bury your father. Go and bury your father. But this is an agoda. Says the Rosh. It's an agoda. The ila, and look at the words of the Rosh. You see the Ashkenazi approach like gefilte fish greasing out of the words. Listen to what he says. The ila hilchasa, if it's not, you can't learn halacha out from it. Why would it be mentioned in Shas? You understand what kind of fakirta logic this is from the Sephardic world? They're like, sure, Shas is full of interesting stories, and if it's in Shas, it must be a halacha. Boom. Another example. We're going to be giving a lot of such examples tonight. Just see the time a little bit. Anybody? So I want to provide a watch, maybe, so I could watch out.
Watch out.
For the time is sensitive.
It's 10
Okay, so let's get the show rolling. Braiso Bavli Gittin Daf Mem Hey Amud Beis. So this is number 6. Braiso Bavli Gittin Mem Hey Amud Beis and Rosh Psokim Dalad Mem Vov. Steht dort nazoi. Ukshartem, uchsaftem. Ukshartem, uchsaftem. It says over there, you shall tie them to a sign on your hands, and you shall write them. Ukshartem, ukshartem, ois al-yodecha, v'hoyu l'tafei Spain, necha uchsaftem amazus b'zeh. Kol mi sheyeshnoi b'kshiva, yeshnoi b'ksiva. If you're mechuyev putting on a tefillin, you can write, which means that a woman or a kotan that write, or an eved isha kotan that write tefillin, it's not going to be kosher. Now, the Rabbeinu Tam in Tosfos says that the same thing applies to tzitzis. Why should tzitzis be different from tefillin? If by tefillin we paskin uksharta uchsafta, so if by tzitzis, the same thing. Is a woman mechuyev in tzitzis? Absolutely not. So if a woman is not mechuyev in tzitzis, then it's safe to say that she's not going to be mechuyev, she's not going to be kosher to tie the tzitzis either. It's not kosher if she ties the tzitzis. The Rosh argues with Rabbeinu Tam, and he uses a few rayos from Gemara, but then he quotes a Medrash Agoda from Bava Basra of Ayin Dal Amud Beis, where it says over there, Ma islechu ba'ardei katalisa. The Divisu that Abchanina ben Yosef will translate in a second. The Asido the Shadyot Chelta Bol Tzadikei the Alma de Ose. Translation: What do you want from the box of the daughter of Abchanina ben Yosef? She will eventually tie from this box. She's going to tie tcheles for the tzadikim, the osad love and tzitzis. In other words, they testified that the daughter of Abchanina ben Yosef was in such a high madrega, she was going to be zeicher, or Mashiach comes, she'll be zeicher to tie the tcheles, not just the tzitzis with tcheles, for the tzaddikim. So what do we see? That a woman is kosher. Now what does he say? He bases it on an agoda. And he says, tefillin and mezuzahs, they're possible, but for other mitzvahs they're not possible, and he bases it heavily on an agoda, on a tale of the Gemara. So once again we see the power of the agodas hashas. Another raya comes from the great Rabbeinu Meshulam. Now bear in mind, Rabbeinu Meshulam comes from an interesting world. He's not Ashkenazi and he's not Sephardi. He is Provincial. Now, by the way, it's not so simple with Provincial. A lot of people don't realize that Jews from the Provence, which had their own nusach tefillah, their own culture, it's all gone. It's mamish history. It's because they either moved to Ashkenazi or Sephardi countries, or Provence is the south of France. Pretty much anything, with some exceptions. That's why it's not so simple. The map is not 100% accurate. But generally speaking, anything south of the Loire River. What's Ashkenaz? Ashkenaz is the Rhine and the Loire. I don't know anybody that adopted the name Rhine. I never heard Jews accept the name Rhine. But the name Luar was, Luria, the famous Ashkenazi name Luria comes from the Luar River. So for some reason, the French river they accepted as a name, the German river was not accepted as a family name, Ashkenaz, based on the why. But bottom line, the Rhineland is the northern border, the Luar is the southern border. Anything south of that is no longer Ashkenaz. Anything south of that is called Provincia, Provence. With some exceptions, the map is not accurate 100%. Also, not just that. You must be reminded, it's weit from Pasha. There were a lot of Ashkenazim that moved southward, immigrated to Narbonne, and to many kehillas in the south of Ashkenazim who learned there. So Provence had a heavy Ashkenazi influence, hence the Orchis Chaim and the Kolboy are considered Ashkenazi Sforim. So it's not exactly so simple. It's a weit from Poshet. But nevertheless, overall, Provence had its own culture. Even the Ravid in the letter, which is printed by Professor Mark Goldis in Encyclopedia L'Gedei Yisrael. He brings down over there a letter from the Ravid that says the northern French, they're not our French, they're their own world. They belong to the world of Ashkenaz and Sarfas, the world of Ashkenaz. They're the world, it's a separate Geder. It's a Geder b'fnei atzmoi. They're not our culture, they're not our nusach, they're not our way of life. It's a Geder b'fnei atzmoi. The reality is, it's interesting that this chalukah between northern France and southern France remained even later. But even much later, up to the time of the 1960s, you had the northern French Jews, the Jews who lived in Paris, the Jews who lived in Alsace-Lorraine, the Jews who lived in Nancy, the Jews who lived in Burgundy, and all those areas of France, they were all Ashkenazim. And then the Jews who lived south of that were a small community of Jews. 95% of French Jewry was living north of the Loire River, and they were all Ashkenazim. But 5% were Portuguese Jews. So it's not exactly the same. They weren't Provincial, they were Portuguese, but still they consider themselves more right to the Sephardim. So that chalukah between north and south remained for recent times.
What happened to the Provincian community?
Nobody really understands what happened to them. Some of them moved away to Ashkenazi countries, some moved to Sephardi countries. And there's nothing left. The last famous one was Adolf Kremia, who was a great philanthropist and a minister in the French government. He had a lot of power, but there's nothing left. A lot of them fried out. A lot of them, unfortunately, fried out. They became terribly secular. I don't know what it was. It's something. They had their own language, by the way. They spoke an interesting language. It was a mix of French and other dialects, a little bit Spanish influence. Very interesting. Now, a similar fate to Italian Jewry, to Greek Jewry. A lot of these communities didn't hold on for some reason. Let's be honest about it here, no offense, but the German Jewish community, or for that matter the French Jewish community, also would not have survived if not for the Eastern European influence. It's the Eastern European influence that kept them alive. They would have ended up the same way, because the German Jews and the French Jews were frying up like flies. So they would have also not survived if not for the Eastern European influence. Let's be honest about that, that's the fact. The reason why the Eastern European states are firm is because they lived in oppressive countries, ghettoed, and that kept them
Pale
from
of settlement.
the Pale of Settlement. That's what kept them going. Okay, let's go a little bit weiter. Rabbi YY, so Rabbi Meshulam, I just want to comment who he is. Of course, as Manazil, we don't have to go through that. It's saying that Rebbe says we have the power today to live in a world that is happy begashmius and still live in a tchum where it is we can live in a world which is good begashmius with hachava begashmius and still be able to hold on to Yiddishkeit. We passed that test already when we came to the United States and Chassidus came here. No more tzaddis chas v'shalom ever again. That's that. Akaponim, either way, Rabbeinu Meshulam lived in the south of France, and he's known as Rabbeinu Meshulam Melun, from Melun, the south of France. He was totally not in the derech of the Franco-German Jewish rabbis. He attacked them constantly, and he was a friend of the Bala Eshkoel, who's known as the second Rebbe, the Bala Eshkoel. He was considered an opponent of Rabbeinu Tam. He shows up in Smicha a lot. He lived in the Tkufa of 1120, 1130, 1140, and we're not sure when he was born, when he passed away, but he lived in the latter. Basically, he lived throughout the 12th century. Rabbeinu Meshulam Paskin, now back to business. Rabbeinu Meshulam Paskin, an interesting psak. He timed that if you take a look throughout the entire, and again, he's not exactly what you call a Sephardi rabbi. He's an in-between. He's like a half-half. He's a half-half. The Provincial rabbis are like a half-half style. And again, it's a very gray area with them. You have the same thing with the Italian rabbis. Some of them are super Ashkenazi, like the Bartanura, who's considered a Talmud Ashkenazi, who's considered a student of the Ashkenazi, he's still a Ma'ari, and the Meir Katzenellenbogen, Rev Yehuda Mintz. These were all Italian rabbis that were heavy Ashkenazi. But then you have other Italian rabbis that were much more related to the Sephardi style. So it's Italy and the south of France are like half-half. In any case, Rabbi Meshulam wants the Taina, and this is quoted in 7. Now I'm giving you 7. Number 7. Skip 6. Go to no, not skip. I mean, we did 6. 7. Babli Shabbos Chafei Amad Beis Sefer Yoshel Rabbeinu Tam Mahadudas Rosenthal Berlin, the Berlin version of Tafresh and Chesched Kachuvas Mamhei Vov Amad 84. That's where you basically have this discussion. So if you take a look, it says in the name of Rava Hadlokas Ner Shabbos Choivo. In the Chafei Amad Beis, it says lighting a candle on Shabbos is considered a choiv, is considered an obligation. It doesn't say mitzvah. It says obligation. It doesn't say mitzvah. Not only that, there's a powerful question. Do you know that the bracha of Lahadlik Neir Shel Shabbos Kodesh doesn't show up in Shas? Doesn't. So Rabbi Meshulam wanted a taina, don't make a bracha. Because this provincial rabbi wanted a taina, don't make a bracha. Because it's not a mitzvah, it's a chayva. What's pshat? It's a chayva. In order to have proper Einik Shabbos, you have to have candles on the table. But it's not a mitzvah. It's not a mamash, a mitzvah like Neir Chanukah. It's not mentioned in Shas.
What were they doing then? At that, like, what the question? What were they doing at that time?
Oh, Rabbi Meshulam in Provence, they wouldn't make a bracha. That's it, no bracha. Light the candles, no bracha. No bracha. They lit the candles, no bracha.
The candles like a mitzvah, like a minhag. The candles.
He felt that it was a chayva to beautify Shabbos, just like it's a chayva to eat geschmack of food on Shabbos.
Candles was a necessity for the beautification.
So it was a steady chayv, just like eating fish on Shabbos or meat on Shabbos or having that. But it wasn't exactly just like dogim or bossa or these inyanim are also a chayva.
The Rambam writes, we don't make a bracha.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. So the idea is we want to say that we don't make a bracha on something which is for te'elas haguf. Exactly. But it's more than that. This is not just the San Samayim. This is a mitzvah. This is not even a mitzvah.
It's a get in a mitzvah.
It's a get in a mitzvah. Thank you. That was a good Londische expression. It's a get in a mitzvah. Part of the mitzvah of Shabbos is to beautify it with candles, but it's not a mitzvah of Ne'atzim.
Doesn't it come in Shas and say that Ner Shabbos comes before Ner Hanukkah?
Mishum Shloim Beisai. The one's not because of the mitzvah. She was a Shloim Beisai. Shalom Bayit. Shli Yikoshel Be'itz Ve'evet. Not to stumble. Rabbeinu Tam comes up pounding. Boom! Ooh, Rabbeinu Tam is from all sides. And you can hear the Ashkenazi French, the challah French toast is coming out, is pounding away. And then he says like this. He says, how could you say?
The Shalom.
Ah, the Shalom, very good. That's right, Shalom does Shalom. That's the original name. Very good, very good. Oh, you know, as you were saying it, I thought about it myself. Even before you said it, in my mind, I thought about that. Either way, Rabbi YY. Yeah, by the way, you should know that the Tiferes Yisrael spells the word Shalom Shalant. Many German Jews and Northern French Jews used to pronounce it Shalom till recent years. That's the proper way to say Shalom. Before the Eastern European Jews changed it to Shalom. Shalom means cooked for a long time. The real Weinreich identifies the word Shalom. The oldest documented source is the Erzurumah of Vienna. Slow cooked. Yeah, cooked for a long time. Yeah. Uriel Weinreich, the famous Yiddish scholar of languages, who studied Yiddish, identifies that as the source of the word. For the record, the oldest document of that word is from the Erzurumah, who was a German Austrian Baltaisist, that lived in France for a Kufa, and was even married one of the northern French rabbi's daughters, the Sar Bikutsi, the Count of Kalsi's daughter. He married. In any case, Shimshon of Kutsi married his daughter. But either way, the reality is that he's the oldest documented source for that word. I want to listen to this. So he says, Ubis, how could you say it's not a mitzvah? And he brings several ichachas, but here's the punchline. Listen to what he says. Ubis sifrei agoda, and in the writings of Agoda Nimtzeis, it says clearly that it's such an important mitzvah. V'hu l'noshim, and it's a mitzvah for the women, l'man kibu oinish ha'olam, because they extinguish the light of the world. That's why they have to rekindle the light of the world by lighting Shabbos candles. How could you say it's not a mitzvah? It's the Chavafeidish Agoda. Just imagine you told us to the Rambam. What the Rambam would respond? Agoda. Thank you. Agoda. It's an Agoda. And he screams so loud. Then he says that there's many brachas that we don't find for example, bracha of Borach Amar V'Smochis from the Psad Yegoy, or in Hilchas Rav Yehuda Yashet Tzog Egos. Tzog Egos is a beautiful bracha that they make after the husband and wife have Be'ilah for the first time, and a successful Be'ilah. They make a bracha Yashet Tzog Egos. It's a beautiful bracha. If you want, I can just read the Lashon for you. I'll get it now. It's a Gishmake bracha.
What does tzog mean?
Yashet Tzog. Here, I'll tell you in a second.
I'm not sure.
You know. It's called Birkas Besulim, the bracha of breaking the Besulim, and it goes as follows: Blessed is Eminut. There's a whole shiloh when exactly you make this bracha, and when do you do it, and basically the idea is like this. You say like this: Blessed are you, Hashem, King of the world. Asher tzog egois, that he protected the egois, he protected the and safeguarded and stored away the egois, the walnut in Gan Eden. Shishanas ha'amokim, the rose of the Shishanas ha'amokim means the rose of the valley. Bal yushel zor b'mayam chosum, that a foreigner should not grab hold or should not rule over the sealed well. Al kain, therefore, ayeles ahovim, the antelope of love and beauty, shomra b'tahara, very poetic words. Shomra b'tahara, it's probably the most nicest bracha you could ever think of. Shomra b'tahara has guarded with purity, the choykli hefeda, and she has not broken the special law. Borach ta Hashem, blessed be Hashem, haboicher b'zalei shel Avram, he who blesses the seed of Avram, the seed of Avram.
What's this
It's brought that. By the way, the Rif doesn't mention this bracha. And there are those that have a minhag today that make it the Marshal and the Orach HaShulchan. Grada, the Spartan didn't really say this bracha. The ones that supported saying it are actually the Ashkenazim, the Orach HaShulchan and the Marshal, but they say to say it without Shem Malchus for it, because the Spartan Gedolim were not exactly for saying this bracha. The Ashkenazim love this bracha very much. Why did the Ashkenazim love it so much? It's super clipped with a lot of midrashim and stuff like that. And basically the idea is, I'm sorry, what?
What's the meaning of this bracha in English? Like, what does it mean?
I translated pretty much in a loose translation I gave.
I don't get the idea of the. Like,
I'll explain to you after.
no, I'm serious. Like, what is this everything like Marcus Canadian?
There's a good shot of what exactly does it mean?
No, I just don't get
Yeah, what exactly does it mean? This nakuda here, the way I translated was literal. 1 second. Yeah, basically, if you want to know what it means, give me just a second. It means, blessed is Hashem who erected, or planted, or put firmly. The word sog means to pick up, or to be mamid. So erected, planted, different adjectives for it, but basically put up, planted this beautiful walnut. You're comparing the woman to a walnut. And you're basically saying that she's the rose, and that she's like a special well that is sealed off from any foreigners of touching to it. And she's like a beautiful antelope that protected herself with purity from the eyes of all the foreigners. And Hashem should bless her purity and thank Hashem that she was found a psula. Baruch Hashem, because if Chas v'Shalom the woman wouldn't be found a psula, it means to say that she had to do with somebody else. You thank Hashem that she's a psula, she's a virgin. Baruch Hashem, haboicher b'zalei shel Avram. Of course, you can understand yourself, even though it's such a beautiful bracha, but the feminists would not be very happy with it. But like upon them either way, the Maisa is. But the Maisa is that it's a beautiful, beautiful bracha. By the way, I don't know if Minhag Chabad, you have to check out what exactly Chabad bracha has a discussion about. I don't know if this comes up in Minhag Chabad. The Orach HaShulchan was a great place. It does say to say it without Shem Malchus. And the Marshal also pushed to say without Shem Malchus. By the Spartan, the bracha is virtually non-existent. Although it does show up in ancient Babylonian, not in ancient, but in medieval Babylonian sources, or pre-medieval Babylonian sources, but during the Kufa of the Go'enim, but practically because it's not brought in Shas, they weren't happy about saying it. The Rif, for example, is not Messiachas to the bracha at all. So what Rabbeinu Tam tells Rabbeinu Meshulam is there's so many beautiful brachas that we say, like Asher Tzog Egois, Borach Amar V'Smochis, and others, and these things B'cha are not mentioned in Shas, and nevertheless, he says, 1 second, and he says, and Kol Shekin over here, because Ksuva B'Sifrei Agoda, U'B'Diroshis Shador Shabbos, And therefore he says, Kol Sheken, when it comes to the Indian of the bracha on the candles, which is mentioned, the idea of the candles being a mitzvah mamish is mentioned in Agadas HaShas. It's mentioned also in the droshes that we say on Shabbos. And look what he finishes off and he says, V'chol Hashemei Yischak Loi. And anyone who hears these words of Rabbeinu Meshulam will laugh at these words. V'chol Ha'ikra Ye'okei. And if you dare uproot this bracha, you will be uprooted. So the Kitzur, you see once again that Rabbeinu Tam comes out swinging with the Ashkenazi French attitude of basically, don't you dare ever think of touching the Agodas. Don't mess with the Agodas Hashas. Don't mess with them. Once again, you see in practical halacha, it's coming out more and more. We're not done yet. It gets even more exciting.
What's a Mar B'Smachis?
Mar B'Smachis is when there's like an extra simcha. You're supposed to say a bracha on Mar B'Smachis. That's a separate. That's its own discussion. When that bracha said, we barely touched the surface about Birkas Psulim either. When do you say Birkas Psulim? What situation? Mar B'Smachis is also when there's an extra simcha. You say the bracha on Mar B'Smachis. But Hoyle, you should know that there's a lot of brachas that we don't say today. A lot of the reason is because we don't really have, it's similar to why the Alpha never took out a lot of piyutim from the Siddur. You know, the people should have kavanah. Just give me a half second. I want to take your point. Just give me a second. Because we have very little brains compared to our ancestors. If we're going to say a million brachas, it's going to become a bracha game. We have to focus on the little bit we have. But let's be honest. Because you have the brachas we say like a mesh. You know, my grandfather's line is Unterstark. Both my grandfathers, side the one that's in Shemayim, Rabbi YY Geisinsky, and side the one that's living here, in Yerushalayim HaKodesh, because David Segal. Both of them, they say brachas with mu'edike kavona, you know, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu. But the average person says a bracha, blah, you know, people don't have patience, you know, they're in the middle of a color war skating camp, they're working buckets, schwitzing, and they really think shot when they say Ashakal Midbar. I'm not blaming them, we're made out of flesh and blood. But if you're going to give a person a million brachas to say, I mean, the Koishirah, people focus on the tefillahs that they have that exist in front of us in the Siddur. You want to, you know, let's try first the brachas we do say, the regular Asher Yotzah, we should say, a million brachas you're going to say now. You know what you're going to have over your head. Make sure the bracha doesn't become a brach. The way the mice is, but that's more of a practical thing with our katnus hamoichin, our katnus hadas. But the reality is, let's be honest with that. These brachas do exist, but they existed more by the Ashkenazim than they did by the Sephardim. The Ashkenazim used to say much more tefillahs than the Sephardim, much more. All these piyutim, we don't even do them today. The Ashkenazim have piyutim for every week, piyutim upon piyutim. Nobody even knows what these piyutim are today almost.
Where can you find them?
You can find them in the Machzor Kol Boy Ashkenaz, the Kol Hashana. You have piyutim for Parshas Baha'aloischel, piyutim for, and they would stick it into the Shemona Esreis and into the Birchas Krishna many times. They would stick it in.
For saying a bracha.
Yeah, bracha I didn't see. That I never saw. Why, you saw such a thing? I never saw such a thing. Later you see because I never. Okay, so now you were joking. I never saw it. I never heard of such a thing. Yeah, you wanted to ask something. Go ahead. Akadobel Smilim, so Kilas Ashkenaz do say it. It's Ashkenaz big time, of course, yes. And by the way, they were mafsik with it in middle of, meaning Ashkenaz Akadman was to do Akadobel in middle of Kriyas HaTorah. They would read the first pasuk and then they would mafsik inside. Could you imagine? There is one set of communities. The problem is they're dwindling, there's almost nothing left of them. Very little left of them. There's one, unbelievable, but there's one set of communities that will keep all these piyutim. And that is the German Jews, those who lived in southern Germany. Near the area where the Baalei HaTosfos lived. They mamish said all these tefillahs. But very little remains of them. Most of them off the path.
Today, Washington Heights, they would say those piyutim?
Washington Heights has a ton of piyutim. There's very little yekish. How many functioning yekishuls are there? There is in Washington Heights. In Germany itself, there's a single functioning yekishul. All they have news for you German Jews, it's a farce. It's all a bunch of Russian Jews that came to live there. There's no German Jews. Just like French Jews is mostly a farce. It's all a bunch of Moroccan Jews that came there. There's almost no French. Actually, in Paris, there is the central shul, even though it's controlled by Sephardim, they left the old Ashkenaz nusach. They say a lot of the piyutim because they keep the old Parisian Ashkenaz custom. The major shul in France, in the center of France, the major shul, the one that Napoleon came to visit, all these that shul keeps mamish the old nusach Ashkenaz Academy, but there's almost no one there. Who's there? A couple of old guys that look like George Washington. And there's not. My point is the Yekik culture has basically faded. Today in Bnei Brak, you have Washington Heights, you have Zurich, you have in Switzerland, Washington Heights, and that's it. In Germany itself, and Germany and France basically almost have no functioning Yekishals. In France, you have a little bit in Strasbourg and Paris here, they place a few places, but also very little. You have in Bnei Brak, Benjamin Shlomo Hamburger, a big scholar of Kaya, Yavuz Ashkenaz, just made recently a shul, which is a small shul, not a big shul, a small shul where he's sticking to the Yekka tradition. But it's Echad Mishtayim Mishpacha, the Eastern Europeans just took everything over. Whether it's Chabad, whether it's Polishes, whether it's Rabbi Cook, who's also Eastern European, whether it's Litvish, which is also Eastern European, the Eastern Europeans just took everything over. They took everybody over. The Polish, Russian Jews conquered everybody, took everybody over, and that's all. They whacked the car. They just finished. They wholesale conquest. How that happened, I'm telling you, it's because they stuck to their guns because they were isolated. Yeah.
Also, that's why you're saying that's why Talmud Babli is there's more Sfardim.
That's not so simple. Let me see if I can get to that. Okay, let me see.
Talmud Yerushalmi has
but that's not so simple.
Agada,
Talmud Yerushalmi has, I wouldn't say more Agada, it has a lot of Agada. There is a theory, Kiviyochel, that Yahadus Ashkenaz is more Talmud Yerushalmi because Talmud Yerushalmi was written in a Christian world, right, in the world of Byzantine Christianity, and Talmud Bavli is more the Sephardim, but that's not so accurate. Have we seen? It is true only in one tchum, Minhagim and Piyutim. The Piyutim that were accepted in the concept of saying Piyutim in the middle of Birchas Krishma doesn't seem to fit with the Bavli, but it does seem to fit with the Yerushalmi. And that tradition, Minhagim, the Nusach HaKavua of the Tefillah, is based on the Talmud Bavli.
On Shabbos we have Piyutim in Birchas Krishma.
Never. Chabad?
Keil
Odin is not considered a Yisuf. It's Anshe Knesset Sagdil themselves made it.
It's who?
Keil Odin, the Anshe Knesset Sagdil themselves made it. It's in the tradition by all rabbis, Ashkenaz and even by Sfar, they accept this tradition. Although the tradition is found more by Ashkenaz, but even by Sfar, they mention it, that the Anshe Knesset Sagdil themselves had it. Keil Odin was different. The fact is we don't put any Piyutim. You know who does put Piyutim? By Birchas Krishma? Ashkenaz. They do big time. Even Polish you can put Piyutim. They put Piyutim throughout a lot of Tufas, Shona, Pesach, Sukkot, Chabad, Birchas Krishma, never. Let's go a little bit weiter. We have a little more to cover. It's worth it. Stick it out. Okay, let's go a little bit fast. Let's do this Kishmir because we can really knock this off quite fast. Let's do this a little bit faster. We'll get point till we finish. Like we did last time with the color of Jewish people's skin, which is of course white, as we spoke. That is the color that the ancient Israelites had. Now, of course, in today's times, all people are equal. Black, white, Judaism has no colors. But I'm saying in ancient times, Jews were white. So the kids, and the point is, in Babli Soita, Daf Lamed Ches. So now I want you to move to 11. Skip to 11, okay? Jump to 11 for a second. Babli Soita Lamed Ches Amen Alf Nebinu Tam Rosh Mordechai Dir Beis Yosef Edechaim Ufro Ches Mem Dalet. I give you the amount of it's 11. Shtei Dort Nazai. The Babli says that the Kohanim pick up their hands Keneged Kispeihem. Keneged, it's also I forgot to mention, did I mention Talmud? No, I didn't mention. You have to also look at Babli Talmud, Aflamed Gimel Lamed Beis. So it says that they pick up their hands, and the Babli, I forgot to mention that, Babli Talmud, Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis, adds that they pick it up Keneged Kispeihem. Doesn't say a word about this. Nothing about this. Nothing about the windows, nothing to mention about. Where does the windows come from?
Which windows?
The Kohanim, they go like this.
Let me demonstrate.
Oh, 1 second, we have a Kohen. He'll do it for you. There we go. They spread their fingers into 3 windows, basically. I have 3 windows. 1, 2, 3.
Somebody told me not to do it. I forgot to Kohen.
What does that have to do with the window?
There is an Inyan not to stop do it, but just to demonstrate what they do, you're allowed to do it. So the kids said, okay, so listen to this. Where does that come from? It's not found in the Bible. Rabbi Nutam, the Rosh and the Mordechai bring it down based on a Medrash Agoda. The Medrash says, I'm standing with them, benching you. I'm benching you together with the Kehanim. That's why it says, that's what the Kehanim spread out their hands to say, Hashem is standing behind us. Mashgiach min hachaloinos. We say this, of course. Who knows when we say this? Mashgiach min hachaloinos. Meitzis min hachalakim. That's what I say every time the Mashgiach walked in. I would say Mashgiach min hachaloinos. Meitzis min hachalakim. And he would say, of course, who's the Mashgiach in all Torah? Shmuel Roitblatt. But I want to be the way. Mashgiach min hachaloinos. Of course, he loved it when I said it. But I want to be the way. Mashgiach min hachaloinos. He actually loved it. It was cute. I'm saying whatever. Don't bother your Mashgiach. It's a number 1 rule. Mashgiach min hachaloinos. Meitzis min hachalakim. That he's looking through the window. windows and he's peeking through the cracks. What's pshat peeking through the cracks? Is the medrash he's peeking through the cracks of the windows of the hands of the kohanim. And then he brings down, even the Mordechai even brings down from the Rav YY, who was a German Jewish rabbi, Rabbi Elazar ben Yoel Halevi. He says like this has no makar in Gemara. He says with a break cut, this has no makar in Gemara. Elo the Darshonim Amrutan, the Midrashim say, Emoir, it says Emoir Molevov. It says Emoir, Koisevonach was based on Emoir. The word Emoir has a vav, the word Koi is missing a vav. Take the vav out of Emoir and stick it in the Koi, and it becomes the word Kof Vav Hey. The Shoresh Kof Vav Hey is Aramaic for window. Like it says, Vayuftach Neich Schlein HaTeva, and Targum says, Uposach Neich Yos Kavas Tevsa. So Kavas, or the Shoresh Kof Vav Hey, or Kof Vav, yeah, I'm sorry?
Cavity as a whole?
No, that's an interesting thought. That's an interesting thought from a Talmud of Balshonos, of an etymological study. But either way, Zokter Azoi, that means window. So Koisevorach means with a window. This became Psat Halacha and is accepted today. The Beis Yosef says, I don't know about this. The Rambam doesn't mention this. The Gemara doesn't mention it. So as far as I'm concerned, you don't do this. You just pick up your hands and that's all. And in many Sephardic Kehilas, they never did this minhag. This was mostly an Ashkenazi minhag. Today it's spread to the Sephardim as well. You'll be surprised. The symbol of Kahuna was mostly an Ashkenaz because of this medrash. All right. Once again, what do we see from here? The powerful focus of Agoda. The moedic koyach that Agodas Hashas has. I'm going to try not to go past 9:30, but let me please try to push whatever I can. We're actually covered most of this paper, by the way, to point out. A kohen ravak. A kohen ravak. A kohen that is not married. I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit, so if you don't mind, can I ask Chevra to hold in their questions till after? Okay? Kohen ravak, a kohen is not married, says the Gemara in Soita Daf Lamed Ches, Amud Beis this time, Soita Daf Lamed Ches, Amud Beis. Did I mention the Soita Daf Lamed Ches, Amud Beis? I'm curious. A moment. Anybody sees over here Soita Daf Lamed Beis, I forget to mention it. Some modern Zach. For some reason, I think I left this detail out. I'm surprised I left it out. One second. Give me a moment, please. One second. I'm trying to find something here. Okay, I see what happened. I mixed it in 11. It's also found in the same Beis Yosef, or the Chaim Kuf Chav Ches Mem Dalet. Basically, in the Ma'amah of 11, you have some of this as well. Okay, so that's what it is. So it says in Sefer Amud Ches Amud Beis, before we quote Amud Ches Amud Aleph, now we have Amud Ches Amud Beis, we have it says, like this, it says, Kol koyin she'ina yol l'duchen ever b'shleishet vorim, koisav olachu, emor lehem b'samol shemi, a koyin has to duchen, he cannot withhold duchening. If he doesn't duchen, he's breaking three tzibuyim, koisav olachu, emor lehem b'samol shemi. Omer lehem b'samol shemi. Now, this applies to any kohen, right? So according to this, if a kohen is not married, should he duchen? 100% he should. And the Beis of Karo brings down, however, that there's some shit to say not. Who's that? The Shiboyle Aleket, who was an Italian Jewish rabbi, who was actually a doctor, by the way, who was a real Italian Ashkenaz rabbi, who's a major source of Ashkenazi custom, quotes in the name of Yitzchak Bar Yehuda from Mainz, Germany, Rashi's teacher, that a kohen that is ponoi does not loisias kapov kuyashori b'li isha shori b'li simcha. It says in the Medrash Agoda in Yevomis daf samach beis on the beis that shori b'li isha shori b'li simcha. If a person doesn't have a wife, he doesn't have simcha, and since you have to bench with simcha because it says by Yitzchak. It says, what does it say? It says by Yitzchak. It says like this: after he ate with the people of Avimelech, it says in Parshas Toldos, it says. And then it says it says that they it says over there, it said after he ate with them, it says that he benched them. Basically that Avimelech benched Yitzchak, and they ended off with blessing for each other, and Yitzchak and Avimelech, and it says first they ate a meal, so it means they have to be happy before they bench. And also it says in Melachim Aleph, Perek Ches Pasuk Navav, it says that by Mashmini Shilach Sal by Baruch Hu that they all bench Shlema on the 8th day. They all bench Shlema. After the 7 days of celebration came the 8th day. They finished eating and celebrating for 7 days. On the 8th day, he sent them home and they benched the king. So we see you can only bench from happiness. And since you can only bench from happiness, you're not allowed to do Birkas Koyanim. You're not happy. If a guy's not married, he's not happy, so he's not allowed to make a Birkas Koyanim. This is the Agoda Mamish. Totally different Agoda. It's like a really heavy Agoda. And Taka, the Ashmore writes, and it's true, it's Chelik Aleph Simon Pei. He says, well, I didn't see such a thing in the Gemara, and I don't know what to say. I mean, he doesn't say I don't know what to say. Actually, he says I do know. He says what to say. He doesn't. I shouldn't say. He says not. He says I don't know. He doesn't say I don't know. He says I know what to say. That is to say. That is to say. He says directly the following words. He says Lo Yishomati V'Echel Min Aviseinu Be'olam, and he says L'Fi Gemara Seinu Einei Nida Kain, and that's it. And he says I paskin against this. He says finished. He paskins against it. And the Beis Yosef paskins against it. The Rambam paskins against halacha l'maisa. This is also the basis for the famous machlekes between the Rambam and the Beis Yosef are doing Birkas Koyanim in Chutz La'aretz. That a whole mocker for Ashkenaz not to do Birkas Koyanim. In Eretz Yisrael, all of Ashkenaz does Birkas Koyanim. Everywhere you go. They do a quick job. They don't do the whole sun thing. And they do it not even during the weekday.
Yeah, not in Chabad.
Not in Chabad. It's interesting. Chabad pump during the weekday, but everybody else, I can tell you right now, 90% of Ashkenazim, and I helped run a minyan of Corona, that is to say a minyan that was during the Corona period, of course, in the center of Bnei Brak, that was the Balkriya, and sometimes the Chazan over there. It basically, the job was basically to build it out as loud as you can, and to build it out in Chol HaKoyach. So basically, I laid over there. I can even show you a video later on. Somebody took a video, a Litvish guy, a memory from it. But I'm upon him either way. The fact is, afterwards, all those that helped run the minyan, they gave them a nice plaque, or thank you, whatever. They didn't pay any money, but they gave a plaque. But I upon him either way, I would have wanted a little cash, but that's another story. But I upon him either way, the fact of the matter is that they always had Birkas Koyanim. 90% of Ashkenazim, it's all right. Eretz Yisrael, 90% of Ashkenazim are Birkas Koyanim every single day.
Why is that?
By the way, even by Chabad, they have some Chabad. There's some that do every day. But the reality is that by Sfar, they do all over the world. Why? Because what's the Pella is not on Sfar. The Pella is on Ashkenaz. The mucker for Ashkenaz not to do it every day in Chutz La'aretz is because we're al Adama Tmeya. We're in pure land. Ashkenaz tells you only in Eretz Yisrael you can have the ultimate simcha. Chutz La'aretz. Ashkenaz says, how can you have simcha? And because you can't have simcha, because you're al Adama Tmeya on impure land, you can't do Birkas Koyanim. You understand the connection? It's all based on an Agoda.
Up and it, no?
Now, the Rebbe wanted very much to behind at that corner, but the Poil he didn't. And even the Rebbe, the Mordechai Eliyahu even asked the Rebbe, like, why don't we taka do it?
Do what?
If you want so much to make Birkas Koyanim everywhere, so do it.
Why talk
It's interesting, a new minhag evolved in the last 10 years.
The Rebbe did not do it.
By chasanas, by chuppah, to make Birkas Koyanim.
That's true. And the Rebbe said that has no market. The Rebbe said it was just because they were looking for a keyboard. Exactly, yeah, in the Chanami.
But they do it every time. It's a new thing.
Listen up, I say to two more good ones, juicy ones. Okay, we're finishing up, we're almost done. Babli Megillah of Gimel and Beis. This I must have put down. Come on. Where did I put this down? Yeah, 9.
Yeah.
9. Babli Megillah of Gimel and Beis. Ran on the Rif Megillah of Gimel and Beis and Aslam Asnissen. So it says over there, no minyan less than 10. It says, V'nikdashti b'seich b'nei Yisrael, kol davar shebikdusha le'eh pachas min asara. In Masechta Sofrim, it's brought down a posuk that's a mocker for this. What's the mocker? It says like this. It says you have to have 10, but then it says that Rabbi Yisrael Shebemarav said you could have less than 10. And as the Rishonim explained, it doesn't mean less than 10. It means less than 10 and down. Do Rabbi Yisrael what's the halacha? How many people do you have to have in a minyan? 6. You have to have 6, right? 6. You have to have 6. Yeah, you're talking about you're talking about right now for different inyanim. But I'm saying I'm talking over here. You're talking about for other inyanim. I'm talking for Alikane. You're talking about. I'm talking over here about the Inyan of by benching. I'm talking over here about the Nekuda of Tefillah. You need 6 people plus another 4 that are lingering around eating cookies or whatever they're doing over there. I'm joking. But the fact of the matter is you need to have 6, right? What's the bucker for 6? It says in Shiras Dvoira, B'froya prois b'Yisrael, b'Yisnadiv Baruchu Hashem. So up to the word Hashem, you have 6 words. 6 words, 6 people. Comes along Rabbeinu Tam and says one version of the Agoda has it actually as 5, because it says till the word Baruchu. So says Rabbeinu Tam, because of this Agoda, I paskin it's enough 5.
Wow.
This psak was not accepted, but once again you see the power of the koyach of the Inyan of Agoda, that Rabbeinu Tam was willing to base it on 5. 5 is enough. Another, Suda Shlishis, Mesechta Shabbos, Where did I bring this one down? Did I bring it down?
I'm not here.
1 second. See if I should choose one. Hey, no, I might have brought it down.
Babli Shava 7.
I'm trying to figure this out for a second.
This would have been the time of 5 people is in Tosfos on Megillah.
This would have been a time in Mokar I gave over here, not 9. Look up 9. Yeah, look up over there, you'll see. Look up over there. Just give me a second.
5 people. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Actually, by the way, if you want to mamash find the proper Mokar, take a look in Sefer HaYoshar, Chelek HaChedushim, Siman Chavav. Okay? Sefer HaYoshar, Chelek HaChedushim, Siman Memvav. Memvav of the Yerushalayim. Siman Chavav of the Yerushalayim Tovshin Yutes version. Okay? You'll find it there. Okay, Rabbi YY. In the Mishnah in Shabbos state, you're not allowed to eat before Mincha till you daven, so Suda Shlishis should be eaten after Mincha. However, there's a medrash in Sheikh HaToyev that says, do not drink water by Bein HaShmoshes. If you drink water by Bein HaShmoshes, you're goizelis mesav. You're stealing from the mason. And the Shiboy the Alekataka brings down that every Bein HaShmoshes, they let the neshomas of the mason drink water. And therefore, if you drink water at the time of Bein HaShmoshes, you're stealing from the mason. Because of this, Rabbi Nutam, in Sefer HaYoshar, Chelek HaTshuvas Memhei Vov, paskin not to make Suda Shlishis by the time of Bein HaShmoshes. And therefore he says, better to eat Suda Shlishis before Mincha than eat after, because you want to make sure that you do not, unless you want to daven Mincha extra early. But if you have to make sure you don't eat during the time of Bein HaShmoshes, because you might come to drink water and that's going to be a problem. The point of the Torah does not accept this halacha, but once again you see that in Tam's reliance on this power.
The Torah is Ashkenazi.
The Torah is Ashkenazi, it's true, but nevertheless, in this specific Nikud, he felt he doesn't want to start up with a clear Gemara. But the reality is, what is the reality? The reality is that you have to finish up. So I'm going to do quickly 2 more, and that we'll finish up with that. And this is Tvila in Nahar. Okay, let me see let me see which one I'll do right now, because we can't take too much time. I'm going to do a very, very interesting one. I'll finish off with a very, very interesting one. We'll have to leave out 1 or 2, but it's okay. There's many, many more examples. We'll leave one. I'll do one last one, and this one is going to knock your socks off. It's the last one. I'm cutting it down to one last one, and then I want to read to you one more interesting thing, and this will conclude. But it's going to knock your socks off. You ready? You ready for a real shaker? Take a look over here. It's going to shake your very, very core. It's going to shake your very core. 12. Now, when it comes to 12, you guys are going to shake. You guys are Pashup going to show. You're going to see Ashkenaz of the medieval period 101. The Gemara says in Kiddushin, Daf Ayin Gimel Amud Aleph. Listen carefully. This is the last example we're doing, Rabbi says, so listen carefully. Ha'isha sheholach baylo lemedinas hayom. 12 months later, 13, 15, 16 months later, he shows up. She's pregnant. She has a baby. What do we say? Mamzer.
No.
If he comes back before 12 months, so if she gave birth before 12 months, it could still be from up to 12 months. It could be from the father before he left.
12 months?
No.
9 months.
No, I'm sorry. What did I say? I'm sorry. I apologize for that. I'm sorry.
I'm checking.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Yeah. So no. 12 months, because it says that sometimes the ubor remains till 12 months, because Eliyahu Novi remained in the Imoy up to 12 months. So up to 12 months, you could say the 12 months. So up to 12 months, you could say, because Eliyahu remained in Imoy up to 12 months. So therefore, that there was a musik in a very extreme case of a baby remaining in Imoy up to 12 months. Up to 12 months, but from 12 months and on, if the baby was born after 12 months, mamzer, done. And this is how the Rambam paskins. Ve'ein ha'ubar mishtahad me'imo yesar shnei chodesh Rambam Yisuri biot esvavi tes comes along the Tosfos and the Rosh in the sources that you see in 12, and they say from the Bahag Maisa like this. They quote from the Bahag. No, they quote not like this. They say that the halacha is that halacha l'maisa we paskin that even past 12 months the baby's not a mamzer. Why? You ready for this? Get ready. It's possible that the husband used the Shem HaMefoirash, and he came from across the earth to his town, lived with his wife, and went back to his destination across the planet.
Can happen to anyone.
Where does that come? Where does that come? Where does that come from? Listen to this. Where does that come from? It comes from a story like this. It comes from a story and even if he didn't use the Shem HaMefoirash, she might have come b'tzima. Even if you want to say he didn't use the Shem HaMefoirash, she might have come secretly. Nobody knew. Perhaps. He came secretly. Why is that? There's a Raisa with the father of Shmuel. The father of Shmuel, it says, went away to a faraway country. And he found a woman from Modai, which is northern Iran, that she knew the language of birds. She was a witch. And she told him, she saw through her speech with the birds, she was tweeting. She knew the ancient tweets. Right? She was tweeting. She knew how Twitter. She knew that, you see, Twitter is witches. So she knew that what? She knew that Shmuel's father was going to come out a great person, so she wanted to have that great person come out from her. So she tried to entice him. She told him like this. She said, I will give you money, just live with me. Live with me. Please live with me. He ran away from her. He came back with the Shem HaMefoirash to his wife that night. He lived with her, and then he went back to the faraway country. When she became pregnant, they took her to Basin and they gave her malchus. While she was pregnant, they started beating her and said, it's a mamzer. And Shmuel says he remembers when he was a baby that he was turning his head in different directions to avoid the rod, because the rod was even hitting the woman's stomach, and he wanted to avoid the beating of the rod. So Shmuel said he was turning his head.
Defensive strategy.
And that's right. And he said like this. He said the lashon he used was. He says like this. Kaf reishe. The lashon is like this. V'omar Shmuel b'korsa d'imei akif reishoi. In my mother's womb, I was tilting my head. Vilma matoyo li reisha l'shoita v'choyvli. Maybe the head of the rod will hit me. So he was turning his head. He remembers as a baby in his mother's womb. So the kid said, Rabbi YY from here, says the Tosfos. Now, Rabbi YY, I want to ask you a question. This is now. Here's the. You're gonna get ready for the cherry on top. This Agoda is not found in Babli or Yerushalmi of us. The Bahag, who was a Babylonian rabbi that lived during the period of the Goinim, but it has a slightly different style than the other Goinim. You don't see the Greco-Roman influence by him at all. The Muslim philosophy and Greco philosophy influence on him at all, totally. And he's very Ashkenazi in style. But the Bahag brings this down as a tradition in Yerushalmi. We don't have it in our Yerushalmi. There's a whole story that perhaps it's possible that the Chachmei Ashkenaz had another version of Yerushalmi that we don't have today, which have many stories. But either way, we don't have it in our Yerushalmi. We don't have it. So it's an Agoda that the sole source is the Bahag. This Agoda became Psak Halacha by Tosfos and the Rosh. Psak Halacha. Maybe the father is in China. In ancient times, he's in China. Maybe he came back from China, lived secretly with his wife, and went back to China. This is an Agoda. But this Agoda became reality by Chachmei Ashkenaz. Now, Rabbi YY, I want to once read again. Now that we finished our share.
This is all to make it man.
Oh, they don't pass it that way. The Rambam finished doesn't pass it that way. Big time not. And Rabbi YY, we're going to have to, because time does not allow us, we're going to leave out the other two, but it's okay. We're not just leaving out two. We're leaving out many, many more examples. But Rabbi YY, you have enough from the examples I gave. And now, it's going to be extra juicy to read again the words of Reb Shimshon Bishantz, as we quoted last time, the lashon that he says, Ve'eich ya'ale alev ish loimar shelo yikach divrei ha'agoda kipshota. How would you even dare to think not to accept Agodas kipshuta? Yalavadei al divrei chachamim ein lehoisif umehem in the groya. Do not add or subtract from the words of the rabbis. Even in Agoda, kol divreim kedorvomoisacham asmeris nituyim. The words are like stuck in with nails and firmly placed forever. The Siyama Inyan, I want to finish off by saying, and we're finishing the class now. I apologize for going a little bit over time, but it was for a good cause. The Siyama Inyan, I do want to finish off by saying, I want to read to you an interesting walker about the difference between Ashkenaz and Sfard, which expresses a lot, and that comes from a rabbi who himself was half Ashkenaz, half Sfard. Some of you might not know this. The Chidah had an Ashkenazi mother. Her name was Sora Bialer. Bialer was the name. So his name was Azulai, but his mother was Ashkenaz. He writes about it. There's even some theories he might have known some Yiddish because of his mother, although that's not clear, but it could very well be. And the Chidah brings down in Kuntvis Masois, Ksav Yad, that was published. It's a Ksav Yad found in the New York Seminar. It was Simon Kuf Lamed Aleph. It's brought down in the Sefer of Chaim Yosef David Azulay by the scholar Meir Benayahu, Chelik Aleph on the Kuf Samachay. It says it will be like this: Hasfardim bechesed. Sfardim come from chesed. Umishum hochi him b'shoyred ma'at. That's why they sing very little piyutim. V'loi olu l'bayis beis. They never reached up to the level of gvura. So explain to me. This Shimi say that gvura. It's thinking of gvura. Umishum hochi boichim b'tisha b'av yoyser mikolak ihilu sakdoishis. That's why Sfardim cry on Tisha B'av more than
Sfardim more than Ashkenazim.
I can't say that I fully understand everything he says. Some of
Ashkenazim
it's
more,
yeah. Some of it remains a bit mysterious to me, and I don't understand what it means. That is to say, of course, the Chidah knew what he's talking about, but I don't fully understand. It could also be things changed in recent times, but who knows? But he says, I guess, Sfardim crying more on Tisha B'av than Or Kehillas, and they sing much less piyutim because they're and Ashkenazim Gvura. Ashkenazim Gvura, Mishmachim Mishirim Haber. That's why they sing a lot. Umafsikim Bebinas Gvura, the Yeshefsik B'neim. I'll soon explain what that means. Umachmirim Bedinim Bebinas Gvura, Vasfardim Bekilim Kiim Chesed. V'yesh Kitrug Ben Sfardim Ashkenazim Sheim Hofchim. That's why there's a Kitrug Ben Sfardim Ashkenazim because they're opposites of each other. So that's why there's like a struggle between them. What he's saying is as follows: Gvura represents the concept of breaking things up into pieces. When you sing piyutim, you're breaking up the davening into pieces. That's why Ashkenazim sing so much piyutim, because he wasn't talking about a Chabad Nosson, he was talking about Nosson Ashkenaz, because they break it up into parts. On the other hand, they don't cry as much by Tisha B'av because they don't have the power of Chesed that the Sfardim have. Then he says that's what Ashkenazim are more naked to be Machmer, and the Sfardim are more naked to be Mekil because the Sfardim are Chesed Ashkenazim Gvura. This statement is recited even clearer with this Amamish. Finishing this is the last thing I'm saying. I'm sorry for keeping everybody here for so long. I apologize. But you know how it is. There was a scholar, Reb Moshe David Vali, who was born in 1697 in Padua, Italy. He learned from the Chachmei Padua. He had a starke shaykhus to the Ramchal, who, by the way, according to Professor Shmuel David Luzzatto, who is the greatest scholar on the Luzzatto family and one of the great scholars of Italian Jewry, Shadal, he was known as, Shmuel David Luzzatto. He was zeichet to be quoted. I didn't. Your wise caver?
In Padua, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
It's interesting. He is Ishkan Halik a mensch.
I just can't.
He's a great scholar. But Halik isn't it? As a matter of fact, he's quite controversial. He belonged to Tmos HaSkola, but you know he was a genius. He was zeichet to the quotes in a good time when we're hugging. He tainas that Luzzatto, by the way, is actually a Ashkenazi family. He believed firmly that Mishpachas Luzzatto are Italian Jews of Ashkenazi heritage. He even said where the name comes from. According to his tradition, the family Luzzatto came from the city Lausitz in Germany. That's where Luzzatto comes from. In any case, he says on Moed de Kazakh. So his friend was a Moshe David Vali. The Moshe David Vali says the following words, and listen carefully, and with this we're finishing the class. Last thing, mamash last thing. I'm going to do a justice to him, since he was such a great tzaddik. I'm going to read his words the way it is without explaining anything. I'm Pasha reading and translating. And you're going to enjoy it very, very much. You're going to love it very much. Listen carefully to what he says. This is the Moshe David Vali. Bear in mind, he was an Italian, which means he was not Ashkenazi or Sfarad. Yodua sheyesh chochma. It's known that there's chochma tvuna be'edvin. There is the concept of chochma and tvuna, chochma and bina. Kinyan shene'emar, v'ha'avadati chochma me'edvin v'svuna me'harisim. When Mashiach comes, Hashem will take away the chochma and bina from Esav. Mikal sheyesh, so we see there's such a concept. V'hine, behold, da ki sfaradu soida chochma. Sfard represents the concept of chochma. Zeu atam, that's the reason he interprets chochma's philosophy. Zeu atam sha sfardim uiskin b'chiburit chochma v'atzlichim. That's why Sfardim are very into philosophy and they were matzliach. Or Rambam zechrein al-bracha, shey Sfardi, the Rambam who was a Sfardi, zechrein al-bracha, hitzliach mekol ma shoyil fana b'chochmas ha-Torah. He was very, very big in chochma, in chochmas ha-Torah as well. V'rabim keitzi boy, b'sifrei chochma shel chama minim. Gam, okay, I'm going to skip a little bit. He says b'kitzer. Oh, then he says like this. Gam, v'diburam b'nachas, u'mesunim b'chol eskeim. Sfardim speak calmly. It should be noted that the Ravid and the Shiur writes actually that Sfardim speak very rough to each other, but whatever. I guess there's some debates about this. But either way, the bottom line is that Sfardim speak calmly because they're mighty. Ach b'pilpul, but when it comes to pilpul, she will say that tvuna, which comes more from bina, breaking things down to pieces. Elam yad v'shem. Sfardim have no ability in that. V'im oiskim boy, if they'll be involved in pilpul, lo yatzlichu, they will not be successful. Ki hu min ha-smoil, that comes from the left. Soid Ashkenazim, Shem ben Atzofay, that's a secret of Ashkenaz, which come from the northern countries. Ashkenazim run quickly, and they're very bombastic natures. Teva ha'esh, they're more like fire. Many would argue this should be applied to the Sfardim. As you can see, this is not black and white, this discussion. He goes on to say that there's different cultures, and then he says Sfardim are more into Bikiyas, Ashkenazim more into Eiker Harden, even though we both had both. He says Italians, like himself, he says Italians are in between. But he says, obviously not about himself, he was a big tzaddik, he says the Italians suffer from a problem, they're weak in some ways, because Italy has too much klipa of Eden, because it's near Rome. In other words, that's why he wants to time, the Italians were very modern. The Yerushalmi, Jerusalem is mamash in the middle of the world, so Jerusalem combines Ashkenaz and Sfard. This is Chacham Moshe David Vali, Sefer Alikutim, Chelek Aleph, Torah Amates, Hitzos Yosef Spinner, Yerushalayim Tavshin and Zion, 1997. Akaponim, either way, when it was published. Now, boys side, what I want to finish off by saying is that there are different Ifanim, different styles, different Ifanim, but I must take the liberty, because I'm an Ashkenazi, to finish off with one last thing. In Siman Shin Ayin Vov of the Sefer of the Rivosh writes as follows.
He was a Sfardi.
The Rivosh was big time as Sfardi, he was like Barasheshis. Yes. In Siman Shin Ayin Vov, the Rivosh writes as follows. A certain Shaila asked him a kasha, and he told him, a certain Talmud asked him a kasha, he said, Shaila kazois lehuyu l'cholisha, don't ask me this kasha. This Shaila is masim for the rabbis from France and Germany. They come to learn sometimes here in Spain. With their pilpulim, they love to say pilpulim. He says, with their pilpulim, we could fit 300 camelbacks. Because in Muslim countries, he used the word camelbacks. 300 camelbacks full of pilpulim. They like to say pilpulim. It's not our style to ask this question. It's not our style. But, he says, now that you ask me, I'll answer you in their style. And then he says, and by the way, he says, Kimi tzorfas teitzei soira udvar Hashem Ashkenaz. Tzorfas will come out Torah and Dvar Hashem from Ashkenaz. So Rabbi YY, this is Shalas Chubas Rivosh Siman Shinayim Vov.
What does he mean by that?
So at the end of the day, Rabbi YY, since I'm Ashkenaz, I have to stand up for my style. So Rabbi YY, I want to say that it says when Mashiach will come, the Asad He says, we'll tell Yitzchak ki ato avinu. Who's Yitzchak Gvura? The Asad who's the Lach going to be like Beis Shammai, the dominance of Ashkenaz. I can put him either way, of course, that's what I'm saying, because I'm an Ashkenazi. If I was a Sephardi, I would say Fakert. That's how it is in life. There's always going to have to be a little bias. Last thing, Mamash, after this Mamash I'm stopping, the editor of a paper in the United States came to the Rebbe once, and he told the Rebbe that he writes sometimes against Israel sometimes. Right? Yeah, of course, you have to write to show you're not biased. So the Rebbe told him, we are all biased. The question is how we direct our biases. So yes, I'm biased, and it's okay, it's healthy. It's healthy. Stand up for your culture, stand up for your minute, and let's talk about it.